Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. Behind him, 846 other HFY warships moved through space like a dark cloud of death. Each ship was the size of a city block, armed with plasma weapons that could melt mountains. The HFY Empire had used this same fleet to crush 17 different alien species. Today, they would crush their 18th. Admiral, we are 6 hours from the human colony, reported Sub-Commander Vrex from his sensor station. The young officer's blue skin showed excitement. Like most HFY, he had heard stories about the strange humans but had never seen one fight. Zektar nodded slowly. He was old for a HFY, his skin darker blue with age spots that marked him as a veteran of many wars. What do our spies tell us about their defenses? The colony called New Geneva has no military ships, sir. Only civilian transports and mining vessels. 2.3 million humans live there, working in the asteroid belt. And their military response? Vrex checked his data pad. Our intelligence says the nearest human military base is 12 light-years away. It would take them 3 days to send help, even with their fastest ships. Zektar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The humans were like all the others, weak, scattered, unprepared. When the HFY came calling, species either surrendered quickly or died slowly. Either way worked fine for the Empire. Sir, another officer called out. We are receiving a transmission from the human colony. Put it on screen. The image changed to show a middle-aged human woman with brown hair and worried eyes. She wore the simple clothes of a colony administrator. This is Director Lisa Hayes of New Geneva Colony. We know you are coming. We have no weapons, no way to fight you. Please, we have children here, families. We surrender. Just don't hurt anyone. Zektar laughed. It was always the same. The humans were supposed to be fierce warriors, according to some reports, but here they were begging like all the rest. Human, you will prepare your people for processing. We will arrive in 6 hours. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your entire colony. He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. Prepare the plasma lances. If they try anything stupid, turn their main city into glass. Meanwhile, 12 light-years away, Captain Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his small quarters when the emergency alarm started screaming. He was a tall man with brown hair and steady green eyes, the kind of person who stayed calm when everyone else was panicking. He had been captain of the USS Defiant for 3 years, and his crew trusted him completely. Morrison ran to the bridge, where Lieutenant Amy Stone was already at her station. She was young but smart, one of the best tactical officers in the fleet. Captain, we just got a distress call from New Geneva. The HFY Empire is attacking with a massive fleet. How massive? Morrison asked, sliding into his captain's chair. 847 ships, sir. They'll reach the colony in 6 hours. Morrison felt his stomach drop. The Defiant was alone out here, the only military ship within 3 days of New Geneva. 800 ships against one. It should have been impossible. Commander Pete Banks looked up from his engineering station. He was older than Morrison, with gray hair and hands that always seemed to be fixing something. Captain, even if we push the engines past their limits, we can only get there in 5 hours and 50 minutes. That gives us 10 minutes, Morrison said. Not much time to evacuate 2 million people. Lieutenant Danny Carter spoke from the weapons station. He was young and eager, always ready for a fight. Sir, we could send a message to headquarters. Ask for backup. The nearest fleet is 3 days away, Morrison replied. Those people will be dead or enslaved by then. Amy Stone looked at her sensor readings again. Captain, the HFY have conquered 17 species. They've never lost a major battle. Our one ship against their entire armada, it's suicide. Morrison stood up and walked to the viewing screen. Space looked peaceful out there, but he knew that in a few hours, it would become a battlefield. He thought about the children on New Geneva, the families who were probably saying goodbye to each other right now, thinking they were about to die. Commander Banks, he said finally, set course for New Geneva, maximum speed. Sir? Banks looked confused. You want us to fight 800 ships? Morrison turned around to face his crew. They were good people, all of them. They had families too, people who would miss them if they died today. But that was the job. That was what they had signed up for. Listen to me, all of you. The Kethvar think they know humans. They think we're just another weak species they can push around. They've studied our basic weapons, our standard tactics. But they don't know everything about us. They don't know what we're really capable of when someone threatens innocent people. Amy Stone frowned. Captain, what are you talking about? Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf might give before attacking. Commander Banks, prepare Protocol 7. Lieutenant Carter, start charging the gravity weapons. Lieutenant Stone, run a full scan on that. Kethvar fleet, I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. The crew exchanged glances. Protocol 7 was classified so high that most of them had never heard of it. And gravity weapons? That was just theoretical science, impossible to actually build. Sir? Banks said slowly. Are you sure about this? Morrison sat back down in his captain's chair. Outside, the stars began to shift as the Defiant turned toward New Geneva. Somewhere ahead of them, 800 alien warships were preparing to destroy everything Morrison had sworn to protect. Commander, in 30 years of studying other species, the Kethvar have learned to expect plasma weapons, missile systems, and energy shields. They've never fought an enemy that learned to break the laws of physics itself. Banks smiled now, understanding. His fingers danced over his control panel, activating systems that officially didn't exist. Aye, sir. Protocol 7 is online. The USS Defiant shot through space toward the biggest fight in human history. Behind them, they left only empty space and the fading heat of their engines. Ahead of them waited an alien armada that was about to learn why humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Morrison looked at his crew one more time. Remember, we're not trying to win a war today. We're just buying time for an evacuation. 10 minutes. That's all those people need. But, deep down, Morrison knew it was going to be much more than that. The USS Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel right at the edge of the New Geneva system. Through the viewing screen, Captain Morrison could see the Kethvar Armada spread across space like a wall of death. 847 ships, each one bigger than his destroyer, moving in perfect formation toward the defenseless colony. My God, whispered Lieutenant Amy Stone. I've never seen so many ships in one place. Commander Pete Banks was busy at his engineering station, his hands flying over controls that most people didn't even know existed. Protocol 7 is fully active, Captain. All systems are online and ready. Morrison nodded. Lieutenant Carter, are the gravity weapons charged? Danny Carter checked his weapons panel, still not quite believing what he was seeing. The readings made no sense according to everything he had learned in the academy. Yes, sir. All 6 gravity cannons are at full power. The space-time manipulation fields are stable. On the bridge of the Kethvar flagship, Sub-Commander Vrek suddenly sat up straight at his sensor station. Admiral, I'm detecting a single ship approaching our position. Admiral Zektar looked bored. Probably some human civilian trying to run away, destroy it, and continue with the attack. Sir, it's not running away, it's coming straight at us, and Admiral... Vrex's voice became uncertain. I'm getting some very strange energy readings from that ship. Zektar walked over to look at the sensor display. What he saw made him frown. The human ship was small, maybe 1/10 the size of his flagship, but the energy signatures were unlike anything in the Kethvar database. What kind of weapons is it carrying? He asked. That's just it, sir. Our computers can't identify them. The power readings are enormous. Much bigger than anything that small ship should be able to generate. Zektar felt the first tiny bit of worry creep into his mind. In 30 years of conquest, he had never seen weapons his computers couldn't identify. Probably some kind of sensor error. Humans are primitive. Their most advanced weapons are simple, plasma cannons and metal projectiles. Meanwhile, on the Defiant, Amy Stone was running deep scans on the alien fleet. What she found made her shake her head in amazement. Captain, their ships are impressive for normal technology. Heavy armor, Powerful plasma weapons, strong energy shields. Against any regular enemy, they would be almost unstoppable. Morrison smiled grimly. But we're not a regular enemy, are we, Commander Banks? Banks looked up from his station, where impossible readings were showing on his screens. No, sir, we definitely are not. The gravitational field generators are working perfectly. We're ready to show them what happens when you mess with physics itself. Morrison opened a communication channel to the Kethavar fleet. Admiral Zektar's blue face appeared on the screen, his sharp teeth visible as he sneered at the human captain. I am Admiral Zektar of the Kethavar Empire. You are in the way of our conquest, human. Surrender now and I might let you live long, enough to watch your colony burn. Morrison looked calmly back at the alien. I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Defiant. I'm here to give you one chance to leave this system peacefully. Turn your ships around and go home. Zektar laughed so hard that other Kethavar on his bridge started laughing too. One tiny ship against my entire armada? Human, you must be insane. We have conquered 17 species. Your people will be the 18th. Those 17 species fought you with conventional weapons, Morrison replied. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic projectiles, we're not like them. All species say they are special, Zektar said, still smiling. Right before we prove them wrong. Morrison's expression never changed. Admiral, you've never fought humans before. I'm giving you one last chance to learn why that matters. Zektar's smile disappeared. There was something in the human's voice, a confidence that didn't make sense. You dare threaten me? I will enjoy watching you die slowly. Morrison cut the communication and turned to his crew. Well, we tried diplomacy. Lieutenant Stone, show me their formation. The screen changed to display the Kethavar fleet. The ships were arranged in a classic attack pattern, with the strongest vessels in front and support ships behind. It was the same formation they had used to crush 17 other species. They're sending 50 ships forward to deal with us, Stone reported. Probably think that's more than enough. Commander Banks checked his readings one more time. Captain, the gravitational manipulators are ready. We can bend space-time in a sphere around our ship, deflecting any energy weapons they fire at us. Morrison nodded. And our offensive capabilities? Danny Carter's voice was excited. Sir, the gravity cannons can create localized fields strong, enough to crush their ships like tin cans. Or we can reverse the field and tear them apart at the molecular level. Morrison stood up and walked to the viewing screen. The 50 Kethavar ships were getting closer, their plasma weapons beginning to glow as they charged up for attack. In a few minutes, this would all be over one way or another. Listen to me, all of you, he said to his crew. What we're about to do has never been done before in actual combat. We're going to show an alien species what happens when humans stop playing by the normal rules of warfare. Amy Stone looked nervous. Captain, what if it doesn't work? What if our technology fails? Morrison turned around, and his crew saw the absolute confidence in his eyes. Lieutenant, humanity spent 10,000 years learning to understand the universe. We studied black holes, neutron stars, quantum mechanics, relativity. We didn't just learn how the universe works, we learned how to make it work for us. Commander Banks activated the gravitational shields. Space around the Defiant began to bend and twist, creating a protective bubble that would deflect any attack. Sir, we're as ready as we'll ever be. The first Kethavar ship fired its plasma lance. The beam of superheated energy streaked across space, bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. It should have vaporized the small human ship instantly. Instead, the plasma beam curved around the Defiant like water flowing around a rock. The gravitational field was bending space itself, making it impossible for energy weapons to reach their target. On the Kethavar flagship, Sub-Commander Vrex stared at his sensors in shock. Admiral, their shields just deflected our most powerful weapon. But sir, that's impossible. Our plasma lances can cut through any known shield technology. Zektar felt ice forming in his stomach. What kind of shields are they using? I don't know, sir. The energy readings are off the scale. It's like they're bending space itself. Morrison smiled as he watched the confused alien ships. Now it's our turn. Lieutenant Carter, show them what a gravity cannon can do. Target the lead ship. Carter's fingers moved over his controls. Deep in the Defiant's hull, massive machines that had never existed before this year began to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. An invisible beam of twisted space-time reached out toward the nearest Kethvar ship. The alien warship simply imploded. In less than a second, a vessel the size of a city block was crushed into a ball of metal and plasma no bigger than a basketball. The gravitational forces were so strong that the ship's own mass destroyed it from the inside out. Admiral Zektar watched his ship die and felt terror for the first time in his life. This wasn't warfare as he knew it. This was something else, entirely. The second Kethvar ship met a different fate. Lieutenant Danny Carter adjusted his gravity cannon to reverse polarity, and the alien warship began to stretch like taffy. The gravitational field pulled the front and back of the ship in opposite directions until the metal hull simply tore apart. Pieces of the vessel scattered across space like leaves in a hurricane. Admiral Zektar gripped the arms of his command chair so hard his claws dug into the metal. "What in the seven hells are those weapons?" Sub-Commander Vrex's voice shook as he read his sensor displays. "Sir, they're not using plasma or kinetic weapons, they're manipulating gravity itself. The humans have weaponized one of the fundamental forces of the universe." On the USS Defiant, Captain Morrison watched the destruction with grim satisfaction. "How long did that take, Lieutenant Stone?" Amy Stone checked her chronometer. 37 seconds, sir. 2 ships down, 48 to go in this first wave." Commander Pete Banks looked up from his engineering station with something like wonder in his eyes. "Captain, all systems are performing perfectly. The gravitational generators are stable and we're barely using 10% of our power." Morrison nodded. "Good. Let's show them what else we can do. Commander, activate the phase shifters." Banks pressed a series of buttons that officially didn't exist. Deep in the Defiant's hull, machines began to vibrate the ship's molecular structure at precisely the right frequency. The destroyer started to flicker, becoming translucent like a ghost. The remaining 48 Kethvar ships opened fire all at once. Hundreds of plasma beams streaked toward the human vessel, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But the beams passed right through the Defiant as if it wasn't there. "Impossible," whispered Zektar. "No ship can become incorporeal." But the Defiant wasn't incorporeal. It was partially phased out of normal space-time, existing in a state between dimensions. The ship could still fire its weapons into normal space, but nothing in normal space could touch it. Danny Carter targeted the third Kethvar ship and fired. This time, the gravity beam passed right through the alien vessel's shields and armor, as if they didn't exist. The ship's internal structure collapsed as its own gravity was turned against it. The vessel folded in on itself like a house of cards. "Report," Morrison ordered. 3 ships destroyed, sir," Stone reported. "The remaining 45 are trying to retreat, but they're too confused to coordinate properly." Morrison smiled coldly. "They're about to get more confused. Commander Banks, activate the time dilation field around the enemy ships." Banks nodded and pressed more impossible buttons. Around the fleeing Kethvar ships, space itself began to slow down. The alien vessels found themselves moving through time at half the normal rate. Their thoughts slowed, their computers lagged, and their weapons fired in slow motion. To the aliens, it felt like swimming through thick honey. Their ships were still moving, but everything seemed wrong. Radio communications became garbled as the time differential scrambled their signals. Meanwhile, the Defiant operated in normal time. Morrison's crew watched as the Kethvar ships crawled across space like insects trapped in amber. "This is beautiful," Carter said as he systematically destroyed ship after ship. The aliens couldn't dodge his attacks because they were moving too slowly to react. Their return fire moved so slowly that the crew could see individual plasma bolts creeping toward them. In 15 minutes, all 50 ships of the first Kethvar wave were destroyed. Not one had managed to land a hit on the Defiant. Admiral Zektar stared at the empty space where his advanced squadron had been. His finest ships, his best crews, wiped out by a single human vessel that seemed to break every law of physics. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the rest of the fleet is demanding to know what happened." Ship captains are asking if they should retreat. Zektar's mind raced. In 30 years of conquest, he had never lost a single battle. The Kethvar Empire was built on the idea that they were the strongest species in the galaxy. If word got out that humans had destroyed 50 ships without taking a scratch, the Empire might collapse. Send a message to all ships, he ordered. The humans got lucky with some kind of experimental weapon. It probably only worked once. We continue the attack. But even as he said it, Zektar didn't believe his own words. The human ship was still there, still flickering in and out of normal space, still surrounded by gravitational fields that bent light itself. On the Defiant, Morrison opened a channel to the entire Kethvar fleet. His image appeared on hundreds of alien bridges, and his calm voice spoke to thousands of terrified warriors. Admiral Zektar, you just watched 50 of your ships die in 15 minutes. They died because you thought humans were like the other species you've conquered. You thought we would fight you with conventional weapons. Morrison stood up and walked closer to the camera. You were wrong. Humanity didn't spend 10,000 years just learning about the universe. We spent that time learning to control it. He gestured toward the empty space where the alien ships had been. Every weapon you have relies on normal physics. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, matter-antimatter reactions. We've moved beyond that. We don't just use the universe's laws. We rewrite them. Zektar found his voice. You're bluffing, human. One ship cannot defeat an entire armada. Morrison smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. Admiral, what you just saw was us being gentle. We gave your ships quick deaths because we believe in mercy. But if you force us to, we can do much worse. He nodded to Commander Banks, who activated another system. Space around the Defiant began to ripple like water. The gravitational waves were visible to the naked eye, bending starlight into rainbow patterns. We can slow down time, speed it up, or stop it completely, Morrison continued. We can make your ships exist in 17 different dimensions at once. We can reverse the flow of entropy and make your weapons fire backwards through time. Amy Stone whispered to her captain, Sir, some of those things aren't actually possible. Morrison winked at her. They don't know that. The psychological effect on the Kethvar fleet was devastating. Ship after ship began reporting technical problems as crews panicked. Some captains demanded permission to retreat. Others simply shut down their engines and refused to move closer to the terrifying human vessel. Last warning, Admiral. Morrison. Broadcast. Leave this system now or discover what happens when humans stop holding back. And Admiral, we haven't even shown you our real weapons yet. Zektar looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him with fear and uncertainty. His communications board was lighting up with calls from ship captains who no longer trusted his leadership. For the first time in his life, Admiral Zektar of the mighty Kethvar Empire was afraid. The humans had just casually destroyed 50 warships while lecturing him about physics. What would they do if they actually got angry? Morrison cut the transmission and turned to his crew. Well done, everyone. How long until the colony evacuation is complete? Stone checked her sensors. The civilian transports are already loading people, sir. They'll need another 4 hours to get everyone off the planet. Morrison settled back into his captain's chair. Then we hold this position for 4 hours. Whatever it takes. Outside, 797 alien warships hung in space, their crews wondering if they were about to die. Chaos spread through the Kethvar fleet like a virus. On ship after ship, crew members gathered around sensor displays trying to understand what they had just witnessed. The humans had destroyed 50 warships in 15 minutes using weapons. That shouldn't exist. Admiral Zektar called an emergency meeting with his senior officers. The blue-skinned aliens clustered around the conference table, their usual confidence replaced by fear and confusion. Science Officer Thelka, Zektar said, his voice tight with stress. Explain to me how one human ship can manipulate gravity. Thelka was an old Kethvar, her skin pale blue with age. She had studied alien technology for 40 years and had never seen anything like this. Admiral, according to our understanding of physics, it should be impossible. The energy requirements alone would need a power source the size of a star. But they're doing it anyway, Zektar said. Yes, sir. They're not just bending the laws of physics, they're rewriting them. The humans have somehow learned to control the fundamental forces that hold the universe together. Sub-Commander Vrek spoke up from his position near the door. Sir, I'm receiving reports from across the fleet. Ship captains are demanding to know if we're going to retreat. Some of them are saying their crews are refusing to fight. Zektar slammed his fist on the table. We are the Kethavar Empire. We have conquered 17 species. We do not retreat from one ship. But even as he said it, Zektar could see the doubt in his officers' eyes. They had all watched the recordings of the battle. They had seen ships disappear into balls of crushed metal, watched vessels torn apart by invisible forces. Meanwhile, on the USS Defiant, Commander Pete Banks was having the time of his life. For 30 years, he had worked on theoretical projects that most people said were impossible. Now he was finally getting to use them in real combat. Captain, he said with excitement, the quantum entanglement communicators are working perfectly. I'm sending false signals across 17 star systems simultaneously. Morrison raised an eyebrow. False signals? Yes, sir. To the Kethvar, it looks like we have hidden fleets positioned throughout their empire. They think they're surrounded by human warships that can appear and disappear at will. Lieutenant Amy Stone checked her tactical display. Sir, I'm detecting massive communication traffic in the alien fleet. They're trying to contact their homeworld for reinforcements. Let me guess, Morrison said with a smile. They can't get through. Danny Carter nodded from his weapons station. That's right, sir. Commander Banks has their faster-than-light communications completely jammed. As far as they know, they're cut off from the rest of their empire. Morrison stood up and walked to the viewing screen. The Kethvar fleet hung in space like a wounded animal, ships scattered and confused. How long has it been since the first attack? 37 minutes, sir, Stone replied. And how are the evacuations going? Stone smiled. The civilian transports are ahead of schedule, Captain. They'll have everyone off the colony in 3 hours instead of 4. Morrison nodded. Good. Now let's make sure our alien friends stay confused for 3 more hours. He turned to Banks. Commander, activate the phantom ship generators. Banks grinned and pressed more buttons that officially didn't exist. Around the Defiant, space began to shimmer. Suddenly, what looked like dozens of human warships appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the alien fleet. The Kethvar sensors went crazy. Ship after ship reported massive human vessels appearing on all sides. The aliens had no way to tell that the ships were just holographic projections powered by gravitational field manipulation. Admiral Zektar stared at his sensor display in horror. Where did all these ships come from? Unknown, sir, Vrex replied, his voice barely a whisper. They just appeared out of nowhere. We're surrounded by at least 40 human warships. But that wasn't the worst part. The phantom ships were moving in impossible ways, phasing in and out of normal space, appearing to teleport from one position to another. To the Kethvar, it looked like the humans had mastered technology that was millions of years ahead of anything they understood. Sir, the communications officer reported, I'm receiving a transmission from the human ship. Morrison's face appeared on the screen again, and this time he wasn't alone. Behind him, the Kethvar could see what looked like dozens of other human officers, all wearing the same confident expressions. Admiral Zektar, Morrison said calmly, I hope you're beginning to understand your situation. What you're seeing now is just a small sample of human military capability. Morrison gestured to one of the phantom ships visible through the view screen. Each of those vessels carries weapons that make our gravity cannons look like toys. We have ships that can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We have vessels that can travel backwards through time to attack you before you even know they're there. Zektar's voice cracked as he replied, What do you want from us? It's simple, Morrison said. Leave this system immediately. Return to your empire and tell them what you learned here. Tell them that humans are not like the other species you've conquered. Morrison's expression grew cold. And, Admiral, if any Kethvar ship ever threatens human civilians again, we won't be this gentle next time. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers were looking at each other with panic in their eyes. "Sir," Vrex said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zektar looked out at the human fleet surrounding them. 40 ships that had appeared from nowhere, armed with weapons that violated every law of physics he knew. Behind them, New Geneva's evacuation ships were visible as tiny dots against the stars. "Ship captains are requesting permission to retreat," another officer reported. "Sir, some of them are already powering down their weapons and turning away." Zektar felt his authority slipping away like sand through his fingers. The Kethvar Empire was built on strength, on the fear that their massive fleets inspired in other species. But what happened when they met a species that was stronger? "Admiral," Thelka said softly, "our intelligence was completely wrong about human capabilities. They're not using advanced versions of conventional technology. They're using something completely different, something we don't understand." Zektar nodded slowly. "How long would it take us to develop similar weapons?" "Sir, we would need to completely rewrite our understanding of physics. It could take centuries, maybe millennia." On the Defiant, Morrison watched the alien fleet's formation beginning to collapse. Ships were moving away from each other, their captains no longer trusting their admiral's orders. "The psychological warfare is working perfectly," Amy Stone reported. "Their fleet discipline is breaking down. Some ships are already preparing to retreat." Morrison smiled. "Humans learned something a long time ago that the Kethvar never figured out. Sometimes the fear of destruction is more effective than destruction itself." Commander Banks checked his instruments. "Sir, the Phantom ships are stable, and our real defensive systems are still at full power. We can maintain this deception for as long as needed." "How much longer until the evacuation is complete?" 2 hours and 43 minutes, sir." Morrison settled back into his captain's chair. "Then we hold this position for 2 hours and 43 minutes, whatever it takes." But he could see that the Kethvar fleet was already beginning to fall apart. Fear was a powerful weapon, and the aliens were discovering that they weren't the most frightening thing in the galaxy after all. Admiral Zektar stood alone on his bridge, watching his empire fall apart through the viewing screen. Half of his fleet had already broken formation, ship captains ignoring his orders and moving their vessels away from the terrifying human ships. The other half remained, but only because their crews were too scared to move. "Sir," Subcommander Vrex said carefully, "perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal. We could return with reinforcements, study these human weapons, develop countermeasures." Zekatar's claws dug deeper into the metal arms of his command chair. In 30 years of conquest, he had never retreated from a battle. If he ran now, his career would be over. Worse, other species might hear about it and think the Kethvar Empire was weak. "No," he said finally. "We finish this here." He turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare the quantum torpedo." Every officer on the bridge went silent. The quantum torpedo was the Kethvar Empire's most devastating weapon, designed to crack the crust of entire planets. They had only used it twice before, both times to destroy worlds that refused to surrender. "Sir," Vrex said, his voice shaking, "the quantum torpedo will destroy the entire colony. All 2 million humans will die." "Exactly," Zektar replied. "If we cannot defeat their military, we deny them their victory. Fire the torpedo at New Geneva's main city." On the USS Defiant, Lieutenant Amy Stone's sensor board suddenly lit up with warning signals. "Captain, the Kethvar flagship is charging some kind of massive weapon. Power readings are off the scale." Captain Morrison felt ice form in his stomach. "What kind of weapon?" "Unknown, sir, but if I'm reading this correctly, it has enough power to destroy an entire planet." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. He had hoped the aliens would retreat after seeing humanity's superior technology. But desperate enemies did desperate things. "Time to intercept?" he asked. Stone worked quickly at her console. "If they fire in the next 60 seconds, we can position ourselves between the torpedo and the colony." "But Captain..." "But what, Lieutenant?" "To intercept it, we'll have to drop our gravitational shields and phase fields. The entire Kethvar fleet will be able to target us." Morrison looked around his bridge at the crew that had trusted him through this impossible battle. Commander Pete Banks, Lieutenant Danny Carter, Amy Stone herself. Good people who deserve to live long lives, have families, see their children grow up. All hands, this is the captain, Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. The enemy is preparing to fire a planet-killing weapon at New Geneva. We're going to stop them. This will require us to drop our defenses and expose ourselves to enemy fire. He paused, looking out at the stars. We came here to protect civilians. That mission hasn't changed. Commander Banks stood up from his engineering station. Sir, I volunteer to manually operate the gravity cannons. The targeting computer might not be fast enough to hit that torpedo. Banks, the radiation exposure from the gravity generators will be lethal. Banks smiled sadly. Captain, I've been working on theoretical physics for 30 years. Today I got to see impossible things become real. If I die doing that, it's a good death. Morrison nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. Do it. Lieutenant. Carter also stood up. Sir, I'm going with him. 2 people can target that torpedo better than 1. Before Morrison could object, Amy Stone spoke up. Captain, we all knew this was a suicide mission when we started. We're not backing down now. The quantum torpedo launched from the HFY flagship, a ball of twisted energy that could unmake matter at the molecular level. It streaked toward New Geneva, leaving a trail of distorted space-time behind it. Morrison gave the order. Drop all defensive fields. Intercept course, maximum. Speed. The USS Defiant suddenly became solid again, dropping out of its phased state and deactivating its gravitational shields. For the first time in the battle, the small human ship was vulnerable. Every HFY vessel in the fleet opened fire at once. Hundreds of plasma beams converged on the Defiant, enough energy to vaporize a small moon. But Morrison's crew was ready. Commander. Banks and Lieutenant Carter had reached the gravity cannon control room deep in the ship's hull. The radiation from the gravitational field generators was already making them sick, but they ignored it. Danny, can you get a lock on that torpedo? Banks asked. Carter's hands flew over the targeting controls. It's moving too fast. I need to lead it, predict where it's going to be. I'll handle the power regulation, Banks said. You just focus on the shot. The plasma beams struck the Defiant's hull, burning through armor and overloading systems. The ship shuddered and sparked, but it kept moving toward the torpedo. Now, Danny, fire now. Carter pressed the trigger. An invisible beam of twisted gravity reached out from the Defiant, traveling at the speed of light toward the quantum torpedo. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the torpedo's quantum matrix became unstable. The weapon that could destroy planets began to tear itself apart, its own energy turning inward. It exploded harmlessly in empty space, releasing a flash of light that could be seen from 3 star systems away. But the Defiant was now defenseless against 700 alien warships. Morrison watched his tactical display as more and more plasma beams struck his ship. The hull was failing, life support was offline, and half his crew was already dead. Captain, Amy Stone said, blood running down her face from a head wound. The colony evacuation is complete. All civilian ships are safely away. Morrison smiled through the pain of his own injuries. Mission accomplished then. But then something impossible happened. The HFY fleet suddenly stopped firing. Every ship, all 700 of them, simply shut down their weapons and hung motionless in space. What are they doing? Stone whispered. Morrison looked at his sensor readings and felt his heart stop. The Defiant's gravity cannons had done more than destroy the torpedo. When they fired at maximum power while the ship was unshielded, they had created a resonance effect that spread throughout the local space-time. Every HFY ship within 1,000 kilometers was experiencing catastrophic structural failure. The aliens' own gravity was turning against them, tearing their vessels apart from the inside. Morrison watched in amazement as ship after ship simply came apart, not from external weapons but from the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Admiral Zektar's flagship was one of the few vessels far enough away to survive. The Admiral stared at his tactical display, watching his entire fleet disintegrate without the humans firing another shot. How? He whispered. How did they do that? His science officer Thelka could barely speak. Sir, they didn't just fire a weapon, they unraveled the strong nuclear force itself. They made the atoms in our ships forget how to hold together. Morrison opened a communication channel to the surviving Kethvar ships. His image appeared on their screens, showing a man bleeding and wounded but still standing. Admiral Zektar, he said quietly, you wanted to see what humans are capable of when we stop holding back. You just did. Morrison gestured toward the debris field that had once been most of the Kethvar fleet. This is what happens when you threaten innocent people. We don't conquer, Admiral. We protect. But we've spent 10,000 years learning to unmake anything that threatens what we protect. Zektar's voice was barely a whisper. What are you? Morrison smiled, and for the first time, it was a genuinely sad smile. We're just humans, Admiral. We're teachers, farmers, engineers, artists. We build things and create beauty and try to make the universe a better place. His expression hardened. But when someone threatens our children, we become something else entirely. The remaining Kethvar ships began to retreat, their crews too terrified to stay in the same star system as the humans. Within an hour, the entire alien fleet had jumped to faster-than-light speed and disappeared. On the bridge of the USS Defiant, Morrison sat in his damaged captain's chair and watched the stars. His ship was barely holding together, half his crew was dead, and it would take months to repair the damage. But New Geneva was safe. 2 million civilians were alive because his crew had been willing to sacrifice everything to protect them. Captain, Amy Stone said softly, we're receiving a transmission from Fleet Headquarters. They want to know what happened here. Morrison thought about his report. How do you explain that a single human ship had faced down an alien armada and sent them running in terror? How do you describe weapons that shouldn't exist and tactics that violated the laws of physics? Tell them we encountered an alien fleet and convince them to leave, Morrison said finally. Stone looked confused. Sir, shouldn't we tell them about the gravity weapons, the phase shifting, the space-time manipulation? Morrison shook his head. Lieutenant, the galaxy just learned that humans are the most dangerous species they've ever met. That's enough for now. He looked out at the stars again, thinking about the Kethvar ships that were even now racing back to their empire with tales of impossible human technology. Besides, Morrison added quietly, they still don't know what we're really capable of when we stop playing nice. In the years that followed, the story of the Battle of New Geneva spread throughout the galaxy. The Kethvar Empire never again attacked human colonies. Other species began to treat humanity with a new kind of respect, the kind reserved for civilizations that could rewrite the laws of